Taehyung finds a love letter from Jungkook, meant for another, inside their old shared notebook. But what lies between the lines is even more haunting. "You weren't supposed to see this, Hyung." The words echoed in Taehyung's ears like a ghost clinging to the wind, though no voice had spoken them aloud. His fingers trembled as they hovered over the worn leather cover of the notebook. Their notebook. The one that had sat buried beneath years of tour merch and studio scraps inside the dusty storage cabinet at Big Hit's old practice room. The smell of aged paper and fading cologne hit him like a wave, Jungkook's cologne. That citrusy, amber scent he used to dab just beneath his jaw, where his skin would heat during rehearsals. Taehyung blinked, but the memory blurred with reality. He didn't mean to find it. He hadn't stepped foot in this room for almost 3 years. Not since the group's quiet hiatus. Not since Jungkook had started disappearing into private studios, long after the lights went out. And now here he was, surrounded by silence, except for the rain tapping against the windows like fingernails on glass. He opened the notebook. The first few pages were familiar. Inside jokes scrawled between late-night lyric drafts, messy doodles of each other, coffee stains, and inked promises they'd made during their trainee years. Promises to never change. Promises to always come back. Then the handwriting changed. Neater, more deliberate, less boyish. And the words, oh, the words were no longer written for him. "To the one who gave me light when I was drowning in gold shadows." Taehyung froze. He read the name once, twice. It wasn't his. It belonged to her. An idol. A rising star. A woman whose name had begun surfacing in headlines beside Jungkook's with unnerving frequency. The letter continued, page after page of raw, unfiltered yearning. Jungkook's heart, carved out with bleeding ink. His fears of never being enough. His desire to disappear into someone who didn't know his past. His confessions that even in the quietest moments, Taehyung's laugh still haunted the edges of his mind. But none of it was for him. None of it. Taehyung's knees buckled as he sat down, hard, against the wooden floor. The notebook slipped from his grasp, pages splaying open like a wounded bird. Rain poured harder, as if the world outside understood what was unraveling inside him. He should have looked away, should have closed the book and left it buried like everything else they never said. But something deeper than pain kept him reading, something gnawing, something primal. Because hidden within the lines of Jungkook's confession was a ghost of something else. A mention, a reference, a sentence scratched out violently with the same pen, but still faintly legible beneath the strokes. "But even if I fall in love with her, it's always been him." The ink bled. His chest ached. What did it mean? Was this a betrayal? Or a silent scream that was never meant to reach him? He couldn't breathe. He had left things unsaid, too. Had swallowed his truth like broken glass after every concert, every fleeting look. He thought maybe one day, when the world was quieter, they would talk. He thought there'd be time. But the letter was dated a year ago. A full year. Had Jungkook meant for him to find it? A knock at the door jolted him. Quick, deliberate. He turned, eyes wide, throat dry. The door creaked open slowly, and Jungkook stood there, soaked to the bone. Eyes not of a man caught, no, but of one finally surrendering to the inevitable. Neither of them spoke. Only the sound of the rain, and the silence that had waited far too long to be broken. "You read it?" Jungkook said, water dripping from his hoodie, pooling beneath his boots. Taehyung didn't answer. He just stared at the man who used to finish his sentences, who used to laugh so easily in his arms backstage when no one was watching. The notebook still lay between them like a living thing, breathing tension into the room, its pages gaping like wounds. "I didn't mean for you to find it that way," Jungkook continued, voice low, almost a whisper. But the room was so still that it cracked like thunder in Taehyung's ears. "Then why leave it there?" Taehyung's voice was hoarse, shaking. "In our notebook?" Jungkook looked away. "I don't know. That's not an answer." Jungkook took a step forward, and Taehyung stood abruptly, chair scraping against the wood. "Don't," Taehyung warned, his voice rising. "Don't come closer. Hyung, don't call me that." Jungkook flinched, lips parting as if to argue, then closing again like he tasted blood. They stood in a charged silence, broken only by the sound of their hearts hammering against everything they weren't saying. "I thought I could burn it," Jungkook finally said. "I came back to destroy it, but it was already too late. Maybe I wanted you to find it. I don't know. Everything got messed up after you left." "I didn't leave," Taehyung said bitterly. "We both walked away. You stopped answering. You stopped showing up. You think I didn't notice? Every room got quieter after you were gone. And you filled that silence with her." The accusation hung in the air like smoke, dense and suffocating. Jungkook ran a hand through his wet hair, pacing. "You don't understand." "No, I don't," Taehyung snapped. "Because when I held your secrets, I held them like glass. I never dropped you. You never said anything." Jungkook exploded. "You think I didn't see the way you looked at me? The way you pulled away just enough to make sure it would never be real?" Taehyung opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Every time I thought there was something more, you'd disappear?" Jungkook continued, voice shaking. "You were always half in, half gone. And I was starving, Taehyung. Starving for something I couldn't name. So yes, I gave her the words I couldn't say to you." Taehyung's jaw clenched. "Then why write that last line?" Jungkook's breath hitched. "You said it's always been me," Taehyung said quietly, eyes narrowing. "So which is the lie? The love letter or the scratch beneath it?" "I don't know," Jungkook admitted. "Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe I was trying to tell myself something I couldn't believe." Taehyung turned away, hand raking through his hair. "God, do you even hear yourself?" "I hear myself just fine. Do you?" Taehyung spun back around. "I hear a coward." Jungkook stepped forward this time, and Taehyung didn't stop him. "You want honesty?" Jungkook growled. "Fine. I wanted you to hurt. I wanted you to feel what I felt every time you walked away, like none of it mattered. I thought if I made you jealous, it would drag you back to me." Taehyung stared at him, stunned. "You were never mine," Jungkook whispered. "Not really, but I needed you to act like you were. Just once." "Do you even love her?" Taehyung asked, trembling. "Or is she just your revenge?" "I cared about her," Jungkook said. "Still do, but not like—" He stopped himself, bit his lip until it turned white. "Not like I cared about you." Silence crashed again. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't beautiful. It was painful and raw and ugly and real. Taehyung sat down slowly, pressing his palms into his eyes. "I loved you, you idiot." Jungkook's breath caught. "I loved you, and I didn't know how to survive it," Taehyung said, voice cracking. "I didn't know how to carry that kind of fire without burning both of us." Jungkook took another step. "I tried to protect you," Taehyung whispered. "I never asked you to." Taehyung looked up. "No, but I knew what this world would do to you if they knew. I saw it coming. And I thought, if I could just wait long enough, maybe it would get easier." "It never did." Taehyung shook his head. "No, it didn't." Jungkook sat down across from him, knees brushing. The rain slowed. Neither spoke. Not until Taehyung lifted his eyes and said, "What do we do now?" Jungkook looked at him with something unreadable. "We stop lying." The weight of those words pressed into every scar between them. "What about her?" Taehyung asked, quieter now. "She knows," Jungkook said. "She always knew. She just wanted me to figure it out for myself." "And the others?" Jungkook sighed. "Namjoon Hyung figured it out a long time ago. He never said anything, but he knew. Jimin, he's angry. Not because we loved each other, but because we let it destroy us in silence." Taehyung looked at him. Really looked. The dark circles under Jungkook's eyes. The bruises that weren't physical. The twitch of his fingers, always searching for a pen, a mic, a purpose. "Do you want to fix this?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook didn't blink. "More than anything." A pause. "Then start by telling me why you left this letter unfinished." Jungkook reached out and touched the page, his fingers tracing the smeared ink of that final, broken confession. Because I knew if I finished it, I'd have to let go of the lie, he said. And I wasn't ready to face what that meant. Taehyung nodded slowly. I want you to finish it, he said. Jungkook looked up, startled. Not for her, Taehyung said. Not even for me. For you. So you can stop running. Jungkook opened his mouth to protest, but Taehyung held up a hand. I'll wait, he said. However long it takes. Jungkook looked at him with eyes full of storms and healing. And then, without a word, he picked up the pen. You're bleeding, Taehyung said, voice soft but alarmed. Jungkook looked down. His knuckles were scraped raw, red streaks etched across them like angry brushstrokes. He hadn't even noticed. The pen had cracked under his grip, the ink leaking across his skin and the open page. The letter. The damn letter. He laughed, bitter and breathless. Of course I am. Taehyung stood frozen, torn between reaching out and staying away. The last time he reached, everything shattered. And now they were standing at the edge of something deeper than regret. A past neither of them could rewrite. Why are you laughing? Taehyung asked carefully. Jungkook's shoulders tensed. Because I finally sat down to write the truth. And I can't. I can't do it. Yes, you can. I've rewritten the ending of this letter 1,000 times in my head. Sometimes you die in it. Sometimes I do. Sometimes we both walk away like strangers. But not once, do we get a happy ending. Taehyung swallowed hard, voice cracking. Why not? Jungkook's eyes locked on his. Because you won't let yourself be loved. Not by me. Not fully. Taehyung flinched like he'd been slapped. He stepped back, the weight of the accusation hitting where no lyric ever could. You think I didn't want to be loved by you? I know you didn't believe you deserved it. Silence. God, Jungkook muttered. You wore that smile like armor, Taehyung. You made everyone believe you were fine, even me. But I saw it. I saw the cracks. I felt them. And what did you do with them? Taehyung fired back. You ran to her. You ran to anyone who looked at you like you were enough because I... His throat closed. Because I couldn't give you that. And maybe that's on me. But don't stand there pretending you were the only one bleeding. Jungkook's voice was a whisper now. Then why didn't you stop me? Taehyung closed his eyes. Because I thought if you were happy, even with someone else, it would be worth it. I thought I could bear it. And could you? No, Taehyung said, broken. I died every time I saw her name next to yours. They stood there in the wreckage of years, of what-ifs and almosts, two ghosts made of fame and silence. Jungkook stepped closer, close enough for Taehyung to feel the heat from his skin. You want to know something sick? Taehyung didn't move. I kissed her with your name in my head, Jungkook said, voice trembling. I touched her hair and pretended it was yours. And I hated myself for it. Then why? Because you never said stay. Jungkook roared, tears springing into his eyes. You never gave me a reason to believe it was real. Taehyung's chest heaved. I waited, Jungkook whispered. So many nights, I waited for a text, a sign, anything. And all I got was silence. I was scared, Taehyung admitted. Scared I'd ruin you. Scared I'd ruin me. That if we gave in, there'd be no coming back. There is no coming back, Jungkook snapped. Not from this. He pointed at the notebook, at the letter, at the open vein of their shared past. But we're here now, he added softer. So what do we do with the ashes? Taehyung took a step forward, slow, deliberate. We stop pretending it didn't happen. We stop acting like it didn't matter. We burn it down properly, this time, and watch. Jungkook frowned. Watch what? Whether the fire destroys us, Taehyung said, or sets us free. The tension between them was so thick it could suffocate. Jungkook reached for the lighter in his back pocket. Same one he used to flick on nervously during interviews. The same one Taehyung once hid in his shoe as a joke. He clicked it. No more letters, Jungkook said. Taehyung nodded. No more hiding. They watched as the pages curled, blackened, disintegrated. But the words, though gone from paper, lingered in the air, etched into muscle memory. The fire flickered out. Taehyung broke the silence first. I want to say it. Jungkook turned to him, heart hammering. Say what? What I never said. Jungkook swallowed hard. Then say it. Taehyung took a breath that felt like rebirth. I loved you. I still do. And I'm tired of loving you in silence. Jungkook blinked, stunned. Taehyung stepped closer, close enough that their breaths mingled. If I asked you to stay now, would you? You don't even have to ask, Jungkook said, voice barely audible. And then he kissed him. Not gently, not cautiously, but with every scream, every lyric, every lonely night folded into a moment that had waited too long. Taehyung's hands found Jungkook's shoulders, pulled him closer, as if the space between them was too dangerous to leave untouched. Jungkook's hands gripped his waist like he was anchoring himself to the only truth left. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, foreheads resting against each other, Jungkook whispered, We can't go back. I don't want to, Taehyung said. I want something real. Jungkook looked into his eyes. Then let's be real, even if it breaks us. Taehyung nodded. Let it. But it didn't break them. Not that night. That night, they stayed in the room where everything had started. Not as idols. Not as members of BTS. Not even as Jungkook and Taehyung. Just two boys who'd finally stopped running. The world could wait. They had each other. And for once, that was enough. The flash of cameras was relentless. Blinding, soulless. 1,000 manufactured suns screaming their attention into Jungkook's skull. He didn't blink. He couldn't afford to. Not now. Not when every click of the shutter was a sniper shot, hunting for cracks, for tells, for whispers his eyes might betray. He stood center stage, body swaying in rhythm with the beat echoing through the stadium. But his mind was somewhere else. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere darker. Taehyung had kissed him last night. No, not just kissed. Confessed. Unraveled. He had said, I love you, like it cost him something. Like bleeding in front of Jungkook was worth it. And now Jungkook was dancing in front of 60,000 strangers, pretending his world hadn't shifted on its axis. Jungkook! Formation. Namjoon's voice crackled in his in-ear monitor, sharp with urgency. He jolted back into step just in time. Hoseok shot him a look, worried but professional. Jimin narrowed his eyes from across the stage, not missing a beat, but clearly clocking every one Jungkook had dropped. After the encore, the lights went black. The crowd roared. Backstage smelled like sweat and cologne and something electric like fear. Taehyung was already there, towel slung over his shoulder, breathing heavy. He didn't speak. Neither did Jungkook. They didn't have to. Not yet. The moment shattered when their manager burst in, phone in hand, face pale. You too. Now. They followed him down a hallway that felt longer than any they'd walked before. The door clicked shut behind them. On the table, a phone was placed face up. The screen showed a paused video thumbnail, grainy, dark, filmed through a crack in a door. Jungkook's stomach sank before the play button was even tapped. The video began. There they were. Last night. In that practice room. Kissing. Taehyung whispering something against Jungkook's lips. Clear as daylight. Jungkook couldn't breathe. The manager's voice cut through the silence like a guillotine. This is being sent to dispatch. How? Taehyung asked, stunned. There was a cleaning crew last night. Someone must have planted a camera. You weren't alone. Jungkook sat down hard. What do they want? Silence. Or a statement. But either way, it's out there now. Taehyung turned to Jungkook. We say it. We say everything. Jungkook stared at him. You want to go public? I want to stop hiding. But this could end everything. Then let it, Taehyung said. I won't lie again. The manager looked between them like they were madmen. Do you understand what you're saying? Do you understand what this costs? Sponsorships. Contracts. Your fans. Our fans aren't stupid, Taehyung interrupted. They've known for years. Some of them. They saw what we wouldn't. But the world, the manager pressed. South Korea isn't ready for this. Jungkook looked at Taehyung, heart pounding. You told me to stop running. he whispered. You asked me to be real. Then be real, Taehyung said. With me. And in that moment, something clicked into place. Jungkook stood. Get our legal team, he told the manager. We'll release a statement tomorrow. The door slammed behind the manager as he stormed out, muttering something about career suicide and insanity. Jungkook turned to Taehyung. This is going to be war. Taehyung smiled, small and fierce. Then let's fight. That night, they didn't go home. They stayed in a studio apartment Namjoon had once used to write lyrics no one ever heard. The walls were covered in posters of old albums, back when dreams were louder than doubts. Taehyung curled up beside Jungkook on the couch, his fingers laced tightly in his. What are you most afraid of? Jungkook didn't answer right away. That I'll lose you anyway. You won't. I lost you before, he said. When we had everything. We didn't have this, Taehyung said, touching his chest. We were just pretending. Now it's real. Jungkook looked at him. Then I'm afraid of what being real costs. The next morning, the world exploded. The video leaked before the company could act. It was trending within an hour. Hashtag Jungkook Taehyung scandal. Hashtag BTS exposed. Hashtag kiss of fire. There were fan wars, chaos, threats, declarations of undying support, hate comments that could split bone, love letters that made Jungkook cry into his hands. Sponsors backed out. One radio station banned their songs. A rival agency issued a statement condemning inappropriate displays among public figures. But something else happened, too. Other artists tweeted words of quiet support. A few idols posted cryptic lines, lyrics, maybe, or veiled encouragement. And then one post from a retired actor hit the world like lightning. They told me I couldn't love him. I still did. Be braver than we were. That night, Big Hit released an official statement. They didn't deny. They didn't deflect. For the first time in the company's history, they stood behind the truth. Taehyung and Jungkook were in love. They always had been. The silence was over. But peace didn't come easily. Jimin didn't speak to them for days. When he finally did, it wasn't with softness. You broke every rule, he said, cornering them in the hallway. And not the industry's rules. Ours. We didn't mean to, Jungkook began. I don't care what you meant, Jimin snapped. You lied. To all of us. And now we have to clean up the mess. Taehyung stepped forward. Would you have rather we stayed silent forever? Died inside so the image could stay perfect? Yes, Jimin shouted. Because that image fed all of us. You think you're brave? You think this is love? Love doesn't blow up your family to prove a point. Namjoon intervened before fists could fly. We're not throwing stones, he said quietly. We're bleeding. All of us. So let's stop pretending this is about betrayal. It's about fear. Jimin looked at Jungkook, eyes red. I would have died for you. You still can, Jungkook whispered. But maybe now it means something. Jimin didn't answer, just walked away. The days turned into weeks. Death threats poured in. So did wedding proposals. Jungkook lost 5 million followers. He gained 6. Taehyung was called a disgrace. He was also named Time's Icon of the Year. On a rooftop in Tokyo, 2 weeks later, Jungkook stood beside Taehyung in the rain. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Do you regret it? Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked at him. No, he said. But I think we just started a war no one's ready to finish. Taehyung took his hand. Then let's be the fire that doesn't burn out. And beneath the storm clouds, with cameras still watching from a distance, they kissed again. Not to prove anything. Not to stir more chaos. Just to remember. They were alive. They were no longer secrets. They were the storm. Tell me the truth, Taehyung. Right now. Do you still want this? Jungkook's voice cracked the silence in the room like a gunshot. Raw. Bleeding with desperation. Taehyung stood by the window, watching the city blur in the rain. The world outside didn't care that his soul was unraveling. The apartment was dim, lit only by the soft blue hue of a television neither of them was watching. On screen, talking heads debated morality, image, consequences. A panel of polished smiles dissecting their lives like a science experiment. You mean us? Taehyung asked without turning. No, Jungkook snapped. I mean this. The press, the hate, the way people look at us now. The way even the staff won't meet our eyes. I want to know if you still believe in us when it's not poetic anymore. Taehyung turned slowly, and his eyes were tired. Not weak, not defeated, just tired of bleeding for things no one else understood. I didn't fall in love with you because it was poetic, he said quietly. I fell in love with you when you had the flu and threw up on your shoes backstage in Osaka. Jungkook let out a breathless laugh. That's disgusting. But it's real. Jungkook walked over to him, the distance between them burning hotter than any camera flash. Then why does it feel like we're drowning in something we can't name anymore? Because we were raised on a lie, Taehyung said. That love is quiet. That love is private. That it belongs in shadows and lyrics and locked doors. But it's not. Not anymore. Jungkook's hands were shaking. I'm scared. I know. What if they destroy us? Then let them try. The door slammed open before either of them could say more. Namjoon stood there, jaw clenched, a folder in his hand and fire in his eyes. You two need to see this. They followed him into the conference room where Yoongi and Jeon were already waiting. Jimin sat in the corner, arms crossed, not looking at anyone. Namjoon slammed the folder onto the table. Someone from the inside leaked your practice room footage. Not just the kiss. Everything. Taehyung stiffened. What do you mean everything? The fights. The conversations. All of it. Every moment you thought was private. Someone's been watching for months. A silence fell that wasn't just shock. It was betrayal, cold and deep. Who? Jungkook whispered. We don't know yet, Namjoon said. But we have suspects. I swear, Yoongi said, eyes narrow. If it's someone on our team, Jeon cut him off. It's not about revenge. It's about survival. No, Taehyung said. It is about revenge. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to hurt us. Someone wanted to burn us down from the inside. Jimin spoke for the first time. Maybe you did that yourselves. The air turned to glass. Taehyung stared at him. Excuse me? Jimin stood. You think the world's ending because people know you're in love? Do you have any idea what the rest of us are dealing with now? The schedules that got cancelled? The contracts pulled? My family got threats, Taehyung. My mother. Jungkook stepped forward. We didn't ask for this to go viral. But you let it, Jimin snapped. You let it blow up because you couldn't wait. Because your love was more important than the group. We are the group, Taehyung said. And we're done lying. Jimin's hands curled into fists. Then maybe you don't belong in it anymore. That silenced the room. Yoongi stood, voice low. Don't say things you can't take back. Maybe they need to hear it, Jimin said. Maybe we all do. Taehyung walked up to him, inches away. Say it to my face then. Jimin looked at him, really looked, and what was there wasn't hate. It was heartbreak. You were my best friend, he whispered. And now I don't even recognize you. Taehyung's voice trembled. I'm still me. No, Jimin said. You're who you had to become to survive this. And I'm not sure I know how to follow you there. He walked out. Jungkook didn't follow. He just closed his eyes and sat down like all the air had been stolen from the room. Namjoon spoke again, softer this time. There's a documentary team who wants to do an exclusive. Not about BTS. About this. About you too. Taehyung didn't move. They say if we control the narrative, we can change it. Namjoon continued. You tell your story. On your terms. Jungkook opened his eyes. And what if we're not ready? Then someone else will tell it for you, Jeon said. That night, Taehyung couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, at the cracks that reminded him of the stage lights, the way they once felt like stars, and now like interrogation beams. Jungkook lay beside him, still awake. Do you remember the first time you touched me? Taehyung asked suddenly. Jungkook smiled faintly. The green room. I was shaking. You grabbed my hand under the table. You didn't let go. I didn't want to. I still don't. Jungkook rolled onto his side, their noses almost touching. Then hold on. The next day they agreed to the documentary. Filming began quietly, discreetly, but the questions weren't soft. They were asked everything. Were you in love during the Wings tour? Did you ever lie to each other? Did you ever consider ending it to protect the group? Did you think the fans would accept you? Do you think they should? Taehyung answered first. I don't want acceptance. I want understanding. If you can't understand that two people who went through hell together found something worth holding on to, then we were never yours to begin with. Jungkook's answer came after a long silence. I was afraid they'd hate me, but I was more afraid of waking up 50 years from now and realizing I never chose myself. The internet reacted like wildfire. Some praised them, some cursed them, some simply listened. And then came the surprise. The woman from the letter Minori, the idol Jungkook had once written to, released her own video. She looked straight into the camera, tears in her eyes. I loved him, she said, but not the way he needed. And I saw it in the way he looked at Taehyung. I never felt second. I felt honored. Because sometimes love is not possession. It's knowing when to step away. That video broke records. It also silenced critics in a way no press release ever could. Taehyung and Jungkook watched it together, hands entwined. She didn't have to do that, Jungkook said. No, Taehyung agreed. She just wanted the truth to live. And for the first time in months, the truth did. It wasn't clean. It wasn't safe. But it was theirs. The world didn't suddenly become kinder. But it did begin to listen. And sometimes that was enough. The first death threat came in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. The words were carved into the paper with such violent pressure that the ink had bled through 3 pages beneath it. You betrayed a nation. You should vanish like the shame you are. Jungkook read it in silence. Taehyung found him at the kitchen counter, letter crumpled in one hand, a coffee mug untouched beside the other. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Taehyung leaned against the counter and stared at the letter's edges like they were knives. Then he took the paper, carefully, and ripped it down the center, then again, until it was confetti on the floor. We knew this would come, he said softly. Knowing doesn't make it easier, Jungkook murmured. No, Taehyung said, his voice darkening. But it does make us ready. The second letter didn't come in the mail. It came from inside the company. A polite, official email wrapped in ice. As a matter of contractual concern and public perception management, we asked that both artists refrain from further public displays of personal intimacy for the foreseeable future. Taehyung read the message twice. Then a third time, slower, as if the wording might shift into something less surgical, less gutting. He showed it to Jungkook. Jungkook didn't say anything. He just exhaled, sat back, and stared at the ceiling. Do you think they regret supporting us? Taehyung asked. I think they're afraid. So are we. But we didn't stop. That night, the documentary footage was finalized. The producers called. Said it was ready for broadcast. Said it was bold. Said they might want to delay it to avoid further backlash. Jungkook laughed bitterly. There is no such thing as safe timing when you're the fire. They approved the release. The next morning, Taehyung woke up to the sound of his name being screamed from the street. He opened the blinds. Crowds. Not fans. Protesters. Placards. Megaphones. A man waving a sign with his name slashed through it in red paint. Jungkook came up behind him, shirtless, hair messy, and followed his gaze. Neither of them spoke. The yelling continued. That afternoon, Min Jung-hee showed up with a duffel bag and a silent fury in his eyes. We're going to Busan. Taehyung blinked. What? Remote house. No cameras. No press. I'm pulling you out of the blast zone for 72 hours. Jungkook frowned. We can't just vanish. That makes it look like we're like you're human? Jung-hee interrupted. Good. Maybe it'll remind people you still bleed. The drive was long, quiet, heavy with unspoken things. The ocean was gray when they arrived. Angry. Familiar. The house was small. 2 bedrooms. Wood floors. No Wi-Fi. No distractions. Just wind and sea and silence. That night, Jungkook paced the living room while Taehyung sat curled on the couch, head against the armrest, eyes shut but not asleep. What if they ask us to step down? Jungkook asked suddenly. Taehyung opened his eyes. What if they ask us to leave the group? I don't know. I don't think I could, Jungkook whispered. I don't think I could give that up. Not even for this? Jungkook froze. That's not fair. Taehyung sat up. Isn't it? You're asking me to choose. I'm asking if you already have. The tension cracked through the air like thunder. Do you think I haven't sacrificed? Jungkook's voice was rising now. Do you think I haven't bled for this? For you? I burned bridges I didn't even build. I destroyed a version of myself that the world loved because I believed in us. I know, Taehyung said. I watched you do it. Then why does it still feel like you're waiting for me to prove something? Because, Taehyung said slowly, every time I turn around, you're looking for a way back to who you were. Jungkook shook his head. That's not true. Taehyung stood, walked to him, then stopped performing in every room we enter. I'm not performing. You were, Taehyung said, and it wasn't cruel. It was just honest. Even with me. Jungkook stared at him, pain flooding every inch of his face. I don't know how to turn it off, he said. Then let me help. He touched Jungkook's chest right over his heart. Let me love the you that doesn't need to sing. The storm outside crashed louder as if the sky itself was breaking open. They stayed in that house for 3 days. They cooked, burnt toast, argued about ramen flavors, slept in the same bed like it was their last safe haven. They didn't check the news. Until the 4th morning when the world came calling. A news report flashed across the screen, accusations not against them but against their label. A whistleblower. Anonymous. Alleging surveillance of private dorm rooms. Hidden mics. Control that ran deeper than image. The footage wasn't just Taehyung and Jungkook's. There were clips of private moments from other idols, other groups. The internet exploded. The fans who had doubted them now turned to rage. Jungkook stared at the screen, his face blank with horror. They were watching all of us. Taehyung felt sick. Even before we came out. Jungkook turned to him. They knew. They always knew. Yoongi didn't speak. He just grabbed his phone and made a call. The lawsuit was filed that same day. A class action. Multiple artists joined. Jungkook and Taehyung became more than a couple. They became a revolution. Headlines changed. Not scandal. Not betrayal. Exploitation. Surveillance. Control. Suddenly, the story wasn't about 2 men in love. It was about who had the right to love without being hunted. On their final night in Busan, Taehyung sat on the porch steps, watching the stars blink behind the clouds. Jungkook joined him, silent for a long time. Then he said, I don't want to be a martyr. You won't be, Taehyung said. You'll be a man who told the truth. And if we lose everything? Taehyung smiled faintly. Then we'll build something new. Together. Jungkook rested his head on Taehyung's shoulder. And for the first time in months, no one was watching. Only the sea. Only the sky. And that was enough. They returned to Seoul under a sky that felt too quiet. The city didn't greet them with flashing lights or press barricades this time, only an oppressive stillness, like everyone was holding their breath. Jungkook stepped out of the car first, sunglasses on, hood up. He didn't speak. Neither did Taehyung, though their fingers brushed in the moment between car and door, a silent tether in the storm. The building was darker than usual. Not physically, but emotionally. Conversations hushed when they passed. Staff members gave them short nods, quickly looking away. Taehyung felt it. That subtle shift. Not hatred. Not even resentment. Just fear. He caught Namjoon waiting by the elevator, arms folded, jaw clenched. They want to meet, Namjoon said, not wasting time. Who? Jungkook asked. Top floor. That was all he said. The ride-up was silent. The air in the executive conference room was clinical, cold, reeking of filtered air and filtered truth. 3 men in suits sat behind the long glass table. Their names didn't matter. Their power did. The one in the middle removed his glasses, placed them neatly on a paper-thin folder, and looked up with eyes that hadn't aged in kindness. You've disrupted our system, he said. Taehyung stared at him. Your system. You forced a narrative into the public that should have remained contained. You've aligned with legal action that undermines decades of control. And now, he said, tone sharpened, you've turned fans into jurors and the press into executioners. Because we told the truth, Jungkook said. You told your truth, another executive corrected. At the expense of the collective. You mean the group, Taehyung said. I mean the machine, the man replied. The one that gave you everything. Jungkook's voice was quiet but steady. We gave you our youth. Our sanity. Ourselves. Don't talk to me about generosity. A silence stretched between them. Then the first man spoke again. We can't erase the past. But we can frame the future. You will release a statement. Together. Stating that your relationship was short-lived, that it occurred during a period of emotional strain, and that it has now ended. No, Taehyung said immediately. If you don't, the man said, flipping open the folder, we will. He pushed the contents forward. Photos. Not of them, but of their families. Mothers. Siblings. Friends. Every vulnerability lined up like dominoes. Jungkook's breath caught. You're threatening our families? He asked, disbelief trembling behind every syllable. We're protecting them, the man replied. From you. From this chaos. Taehyung reached across the table slowly, took one photo in hand. It was of his father, standing in front of a grocery store, unaware of the camera trained on him. You think I'm afraid of you? Taehyung asked. No, the man said. I think you're afraid of what you'll lose. Taehyung slid the photo back across the glass. Then he stood. Jungkook stood with him. You've already lost us, Taehyung said and walked out. Outside, Jungkook was trembling. Did that just happen? Taehyung didn't answer. His hand found Jungkook's again. They didn't speak on the way down. But when the elevator opened on the 4th floor, the entire group was waiting. Namjoon, Jimin, Hoseok, Jeon, Yoongi. No staff. No executives. No cameras. Just the brothers. Jimin looked at them, jaw set. Did they threaten you? He asked. Taehyung hesitated. Jungkook spoke first. Yes. The room shifted. Energy changed. Like a match had been struck beneath a vat of gasoline. Yoongi stepped forward. Then we burned them first. Hoseok nodded. All of us. Namjoon took a breath. We stand together. No compromise. Jimin looked between them all. Even if it ends the group? We are the group, Jeon said. What's the point of saving something if we have to become strangers to keep it alive? They huddled that night. No managers. No company. Just them. They filmed a video. No script. Just truth. Taehyung started. We never wanted to break anything. Jungkook followed. We just wanted to live honestly. Yoongi's voice cut through next. They watched us without consent. Namjoon's words were calm, final. And they tried to silence us with fear. Hoseok, Jeon, Jimin. All of them spoke. It was real. Messy. Raw. When they posted it, they disabled comments. No fan engagement. No hashtags. No merchandise. Just 7 men saying, this is ours. The next 24 hours shattered everything. 3 sponsors dropped BTS within the hour. 1 major magazine canceled a cover shoot. An anonymous source leaked more surveillance tapes, some from years ago. But this time, the narrative didn't fracture. It coalesced. Fans created a new tag, hashtag Let Them Live. Trending #1 in 12 countries. Celebrities, international, domestic, retweeted the video. Some spoke publicly. Others silently changed their profile pictures to a burning camera lens. By the 3rd day, the media couldn't keep up. The story wasn't just about Taehyung and Jungkook anymore. It was about the cost of silence, of curated dreams, of industrialized emotion. And then the final blow landed. The Ministry of Culture and Sports announced a formal investigation into entertainment surveillance prompted by the case involving Jungkook, Taehyung, and other unnamed idols. It was unprecedented. Jungkook sat in Taehyung's lap that night on the balcony, neither of them speaking, just holding, just breathing. Below them, the city buzzed. You okay? Taehyung whispered into Jungkook's hair. I think so, he murmured. I think this is what breathing feels like. Taehyung kissed his temple. We did this. Jungkook smiled against his neck. Yeah, we did. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, the silence around them wasn't surveillance. It was peace. The stadium lights were already warm on Jungkook's skin, but the sweat gathering behind his neck wasn't from the heat. He stood in the shadows of the massive Seoul Olympic Dome, the roar of 70,000 fans vibrating through the concrete like a war drum. The vibrations didn't excite him. They shook something loose inside him. Something raw. Unsettled. His mic pack was already clipped to his back. Taehyung was 5 feet away, stretching his shoulders silently. Jungkook watched the way his fingers flexed, slow, calculated, like he was grounding himself to something invisible. The tension between them wasn't new, but tonight it was loaded with something more than adrenaline. It had been 3 weeks since the video had gone live. 3 weeks of upheaval, revolution, chaos, loyalty. They had fought executives. They had endured smear campaigns. They had watched other idols come forward hesitant, terrified, but still stepping into the same light Taehyung and Jungkook had bled to uncover. But tonight wasn't about speeches or interviews or social movements. Tonight was a performance. Their first full stadium show since the scandal, the leaks, the lawsuit, the shift. And Jungkook didn't know if he could do it. He turned to Taehyung. Are you sure about this? Taehyung's eyes didn't waver. No, but I'm not going to let fear decide for me anymore. They shared one long look. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just 2 souls who had seen each other through the darkest mirror and were still standing. Then the earpieces crackled. 5 minutes to walk. The 7 members lined up. Namjoon gave a small nod. Hoseok bounced on his heels. Jeon exhaled a soft mantra. Jimin closed his eyes, whispered something to himself. Jungkook, unreadable, just stood perfectly still. The tunnel ahead of them began to glow. Spotlights. Smoke. The crowd exploded as the first VCR intro ended. It was time. They walked out together. The stage lit up in flames, lasers, screams. The setlist opened with the iconic anthem that once crowned their rise, now a challenge to everything trying to bury them. Jungkook hit every move, but he wasn't present. Not fully. His limbs remembered, but his mind was stuck. Somewhere between fear and fury. It wasn't until the fourth song, when Taehyung stepped forward for his solo, that everything cracked. He changed the lyric. It was subtle. Only a few words. But they weren't in the script. The line that had always been vague suddenly became direct. I don't hide behind metaphors anymore. I kissed him in the fire and I came out alive. Jungkook froze mid-dance. The crowd reacted instantly. Screams, cheers, some stunned silence. The sound techs were scrambling. Managers offstage panicked. But Taehyung didn't stop. He finished the verse. He looked straight into the camera lens. And he smiled, not defiant, not arrogant, free. Jungkook didn't move when his next verse came. The beat kept playing. Taehyung didn't flinch. He crossed the stage. And Jungkook met him halfway. The mics picked up everything. I'm not ready, Jungkook whispered. That's okay, Taehyung said. The music continued. The crowd screamed louder. The other members improvised the transition. But the cameras, the global live stream, captured what mattered. Two men standing in the center of a 1,000,000,000 stage, surrounded by lights, smoke, fireworks, doing nothing but being honest. After the show, backstage was war. The head of PR screamed first. What the hell was that? Namjoon stepped between them immediately. That was the truth. Do you have any idea the contracts you just burned? The sponsors who were already pulling out again. Yoongi stepped in. Let them go. You don't get it, the woman snapped, wild-eyed. This is bigger than you. This is shareholders. This is broadcast networks. International deals. We know what this is, Jeon said, his voice calmer than anyone expected. We just stopped pretending we didn't. Taehyung was silent. Jungkook too. Both were still coming down from whatever that moment on stage had awakened. There was no regret. Just quiet. Just certainty. The woman turned to Jungkook. Do you want to kill your own career? Is that what you want? Jungkook looked at her, really looked. I want to live, he said. If that kills something, then maybe it wasn't life to begin with. The next day, headlines were brutal. BTS chaos on stage, Taehyung and Jungkook crossed the line. Live show hijacked by personal agenda. K-pop's most dangerous couple, still not done. But beneath the firestorm, something else was happening. A movement. More idols came forward. Some posted selfies with gender-neutral captions. Others liked posts that had been considered off-brand. A few directly thanked Jungkook and Taehyung for creating oxygen. The ministry investigation expanded. Journalists uncovered more. Tapes. Emails. Entire networks of control contracts that governed who artists could date, what they could post, even what songs they could write. The world was watching now, not to cancel, but to understand. At home, Taehyung's mother called him for the first time since the scandal broke. He answered with a shaking hand. Amma. Her voice cracked. I'm proud of you. Those 4 words shattered something deeper than any headline. Jungkook cried when he heard. Not because it was about him, but because he had seen Taehyung carry that weight like a second spine for so long. That night, they didn't go to bed. They stayed on the roof of Jungkook's apartment, under a blanket, eating leftover sushi and drinking soju from paper cups. Do you think this ends in peace? Jungkook asked. Taehyung thought for a long time. I think peace isn't the absence of pain, he said. It's the presence of something more honest than fear. Jungkook nodded. Do you regret it? Taehyung looked at him. No, he whispered. Do you? No, Jungkook said, then leaned forward, kissed him slow, as if to write the word into the moment itself. And far beneath them, the world burned, shifted, changed. But up there, they were simply 2 hearts that refused to break for anyone else's comfort. And they were free. The letter arrived with no name. No signature. No stamps. Just a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, slipped under the door of Jungkook's studio late at night while the building was empty. He found it just after midnight when he returned from a recording session that had gone sour. He was exhausted, burned out, full of questions he didn't want to voice aloud, not to his members, not to Taehyung, not even to himself. But the second he saw that pristine white fold on the ground, untouched by boot scuff or dust, he knew it was for him. He opened it with a trembling hand. You think you're brave, but all you did was abandon the people who made you. You betrayed the image we loved. You destroyed something sacred. You were not a symbol. You were a symptom. He stood there, reading the words again and again until his eyes blurred. There was no rage. Not yet. Only silence. A bottomless, awful silence like the space after a scream. He didn't sleep that night. By the time Taehyung woke up the next morning and padded into the kitchen in nothing but one of Jungkook's hoodies, Jungkook was already on his third espresso shot, his jaw tight, his hands shaking too much to scroll his phone properly. You okay? Taehyung asked softly, pausing mid-step. Jungkook held out the letter. Taehyung read it in silence. Then again. And again. He set it down carefully without comment. Poured water into the kettle. Waited until it boiled. Then looked up. This is the kind of thing they say when they're afraid the world's changing without them. Jungkook stared at him. You think I care about their fear? He asked, the steel in his voice barely masked. They're calling me a symptom, Tae. Like I'm a disease. You're not, Taehyung said. But you're a sign. Of everything they don't want to admit. Jungkook stood, pacing, unable to stay still. I didn't ask to be a symbol. I didn't ask to carry anyone's movement on my back. I just wanted to love you. I know. Then why does it feel like everything I touch turns into a battlefield? Because you've stopped playing dead. Taehyung crossed the room, pressed a hand to Jungkook's chest. Because you're living and people don't know what to do with someone who doesn't beg for permission to exist. That day, the world kept shifting beneath their feet. More footage leaked. Not of Jungkook or Taehyung, but of others. 2 young female idols caught whispering in a stairwell. A male trainee seen leaving another male trainee's room past midnight. Comments exploded. It was no longer about scandal. It was systemic. The machine had eyes everywhere. And now everyone could see it. Back at the company, the panic had turned into full-on damage control. Meetings were constant. Emails were monitored. The board of directors issued formal apologies and promised internal audits, but no one believed them. Yoongi arrived at Jungkook's studio later that night with 3 folders in hand and a fury in his bones. You need to see this, he said, slamming them on the desk. Jungkook opened the first folder. It was a printed contract, his own, highlighted sections outlining emotional behavior restrictions, image preservation clauses, and most shocking of all, relationship pre-approvals. They made you sign this? Taehyung asked, horrified. Everyone did, Yoongi said. Even me. It was buried in the amendments sections after our 3rd album. We were kids. We didn't know what half the legal language meant. Jungkook's hands curled into fists. This isn't just control. It's ownership. That's why I'm going public, Yoongi said. Both Jungkook and Taehyung looked up. What, they said in unison. I'm done, Yoongi said, voice calm but unshakable. I'm speaking on live radio tomorrow night. No management. No PR filters. Just me. And the truth. Hyung, that could end your career, Then let it, he said. Because if one more kid grows up thinking they have to trade their soul to touch a mic, then everything we built is worthless. There was a long silence. Jungkook reached over and covered Yoongi's hand with his own. Thank you, he whispered. The next night, the entire nation listened. Yoongi didn't speak in poetry. He spoke in wounds. He told the world about the contracts, the surveillance, the silencing, and the fear. He never named names. He didn't have to. The truth was too specific to ignore. And in the final 5 minutes, his voice cracked for the first time in years as he said, if Jungkook and Taehyung had come to me years ago and told me who they were, I would have said, be careful. Not because love is wrong, but because truth in this industry is more dangerous than a lie. I'm saying this now, I was wrong. They're not the symptom. They're the cure. And if we're lucky, they won't walk away from us the way we walked away from them. That night, Jungkook sat on the studio floor and cried for an hour straight. Not because it hurt, because it finally didn't. The ripple effect was immediate. An anonymous insider from another agency resigned, leaving behind a manifesto that spread like wildfire. Trainees from multiple companies began organizing. Fans created a protection network. Lawyers stepped forward, offering services pro bono for exploited artists. People began listening. But it wasn't without consequence. Their agency threatened termination again. Private texts from high-level staff were leaked, ugly, cruel, threatening. They were called liars, manipulators, attention seekers. But none of it landed anymore. Because people had seen the truth. And it was too late to forget it. 1 week later, they were scheduled to perform again. Not in a stadium. Not for profit. At a charity event supporting mental health services for entertainment trainees. There was no pyrotechnics. No stage rig. Just 7 microphones. A simple black backdrop. And them. They performed stripped-down versions of their songs. Acoustic. Raw. Honest. And then, near the end, Taehyung stepped forward. He looked at the audience, industry people, fans, journalists, students. I was afraid my voice would ruin everything, he said. That if I told the truth, I would lose all of you. He turned to Jungkook. I didn't lose you. He looked back at the crowd. And I think maybe I never lost you either. Jungkook joined him on stage, mic in hand. And for the first time, they sang the song they wrote together in secret. A track no one had heard. No label approval. No preview. Just pain turned melody. No more noise. It wasn't a love song. It was a survival song. The lyrics spoke of cameras in the walls. Of dreams that felt like cages. Of nights spent awake wondering if it would all be worth it. And in the chorus, let them say my name like a wound. Let them break my face in frames. I'd rather bleed out in the open than choke on silence again. By the time they finished, the audience was standing. Some crying. Some stunned. But no one unmoved. That night, they walked off stage hand in hand. And not one single person looked away. Not anymore. They weren't noise. They were the sound of truth. The courtroom was colder than Jungkook expected. Not just the temperature, he wore a black turtleneck under a dark blazer, but something in the air was sharp. Sterile. Like it was designed to keep emotion out. It was the final day of the trial. The civil suit filed against the entertainment company had shaken the entire industry to its core. What began with Jungkook and Taehyung had unraveled an entire empire of surveillance, coercion, and silent suffering. More than 20 artists, past and present, had joined the case over the months. Some remained anonymous. Others stood beside them. Taehyung sat beside him now, fingers laced loosely with his beneath the table. Their knuckles pressed together with quiet pressure. The touch wasn't for comfort. It was a signal. I'm here. Still. Until the end. The judge entered. The room stood. The final statements were read. The company's defense team, slick in their presentation, leaned heavily on the argument of contractual consent, of image management clauses, of standardized operational oversight. They called the leaked footage regrettable but inevitable byproduct of high-demand artist handling. Their final words were calculated. This was not exploitation. This was expectation. Jungkook closed his eyes. Then the judge turned to him. Jeon Jungkook SSI, would you like to speak before judgment is rendered? Jungkook stood slowly. The courtroom was silent. Cameras weren't allowed inside. But he knew there were eyes on them everywhere. Watching. Waiting. Hoping for them to falter or lead. He didn't look at the lawyers. He didn't look at the judge. He looked at Taehyung. And then he spoke. When I was 15, I signed a contract that told me who I was allowed to be. It didn't say that directly. That's not how these things work. It said what I couldn't say. Who I couldn't be seen with. What my smile meant. What my silence protected. He paused. His voice didn't shake. But it didn't rise either. I thought that was normal. I thought love was a luxury for people who hadn't sold their souls to songs. Now he looked forward. But it wasn't the silence that destroyed me. It was how comfortable I became inside it. Until one day. I wasn't. He glanced at Taehyung. He changed that. Not because he kissed me. Not because he loved me. But because he refused to let me keep erasing myself just to survive. Taehyung lowered his eyes, overwhelmed. Jungkook turned back to the court. I am not the only one. You've heard their voices. You've read their statements. What you haven't heard is the silence between the lines. The sound of kids trying to cry without making a noise. The sound of contracts becoming cages. He took one breath. One final truth. This case was never about me. Or even about us. It's about the right to exist without being filtered through someone else's fear. When he sat down, no one clapped. It wasn't that kind of room. But even the judge took an extra moment before continuing. Taehyung squeezed his hand once. Tight. Then the verdict came. The court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. The contracts were declared exploitative. The surveillance deemed illegal. The company was fined, sued, dismantled. An entire department of artist monitoring was exposed and shut down. Jungkook didn't feel triumph. Just release. Like taking off a shirt he'd been suffocating in for years. The fallout was immediate. Shareholders fled. Apologies were issued, but no one cared. The headlines wrote themselves. But the world didn't end. In fact, something strange happened. Other labels announced reform. Idols were allowed to update social media without approval for the first time in years. Dating bans were lifted quietly, one by one. One female singer released a ballad she'd written years ago but had been forbidden to share because it was too obviously sapphic. She titled it For the Girl I Couldn't Name. Taehyung and Jungkook didn't tour that month. They went north. Out of the city. Into the hills. Just them. No cameras. No stage. No staff. Just silence. The kind that healed instead of hid. They stayed in a house made of cedar and glass. Wide windows. Mountains wrapped around them like arms. On the third night, while watching the stars bleed into the black, Taehyung spoke. Do you still love me? Jungkook turned. He wasn't surprised by the question. But it hit differently now that they were free to answer it without consequence. I don't think I ever stopped, he said. I just forgot what it felt like when love wasn't a secret. Taehyung reached for his hand. Do you want to stop being an idol? He asked. Jungkook looked at the sky. No, he said. I just want to stop being a product. Then what are we now? Storytellers, Jungkook said. Truth tellers. Survivors. Lovers. Taehyung smiled. That's a long business card. They didn't need a stage to sing anymore. One night, Taehyung pulled out his guitar, battered and out of tune. Jungkook sang into the night with no mic, no lighting rig, just the crackle of a fireplace and the sound of two voices finding their way back to what mattered. Later, they wrote a new song together. Just for them. They never released it. It had no title. It ended mid-verse. And that was enough. When they returned to Seoul, the world was quieter. Not silent, but calmer. Their fanbase was smaller but stronger. Tighter. More real. They did smaller shows. Intimate. Minimal production. More space for breath, for connection, for joy. They signed with a new label. No contracts about image. Just music. Jungkook released a solo album. One track was a voicemail Taehyung had left during the trial. It was raw. Messy. Loved. Taehyung opened an art gallery. One room was filled with photos Jungkook had taken in secret of shadows, hands, sky. He called it the things they couldn't script. They weren't flawless anymore. But they weren't afraid either. One night, 2 years after the verdict, they stood on a rooftop just like they used to. Below, Seoul buzzed. Above, stars. Jungkook turned to Taehyung. Do you miss the old days? Taehyung thought for a moment. No, he said. I think the old days missed us. Jungkook nodded. He understood. There was no going back. Only forward. Only love. And finally, they had enough air to breathe all of it in.